God forgave murderers. He forgave thieves. He forgave those who crucified Jesus. He even forgave empires that burned cities alive. But he refused to forgive one nation. Why? This is the Forbidden Bible, where the stories you thought you knew reveal truths you were never meant to ignore. Subscribe now, because some truths change everything. God forgave Nineveh, the most violent empire of the ancient world, a people who skinned prisoners alive, burned cities without mercy, and built towers of human heads outside their gates. Their cruelty was not hidden. It was their identity. And yet, when they repented, God stopped the judgment. God forgave Egypt, a nation that enslaved his people for over 400 years, a nation that drowned Hebrew babies in the Nile, not out of war, but out of fear of losing control, fear of a people they could not dominate. And still, God did not erase them. He judged them. Yes, he broke their power, but he allowed them to remain. God forgave Babylon, the empire that burned his temple to the ground, destroyed Jerusalem, and dragged his people into exile across the desert. They took what was sacred and turned it into trophies. They mocked what belonged to God. And yet, God still moved inside Babylon. He raised prophets there. He spoke to kings there. He revealed his power, even in the heart of an empire that defied him. So here is the tension. Every empire that crushed Israel was judged severely, publicly, undeniably, but not erased, except one, Amalek. God did not just judge Amalek. He did not just punish them. He made a declaration, a statement so absolute, it stands alone. In all of Scripture, I will completely blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven, not weaken, not scatter, not exile, erase. Not just their power, not just their land, their memory. Think about that. God was not just ending a nation. He was removing their existence from history itself. No history, no descendants, no trace. As if they had never existed. That kind of judgment does not happen by accident. It is not emotional. It is not impulsive. It is deliberate. And it raises a question that most people avoid. What could a nation do that was worse than slavery, worse than genocide, worse than burning an entire holy city? What could cross a line so final, so irreversible, that even a merciful God says, no more? Because this is where most explanations fall apart. People say they were violent. So were the Assyrians. They attacked Israel. So did the Philistines. They were evil. So was Babylon. So that cannot be the reason. Violence was common. War was everywhere. Cruelty was normal in the ancient world. So why Amalek? The truth is, this is not about how brutal they were. It is about what they chose, and, more importantly, what they targeted. Because Amalek was not fighting for land. They were not fighting for territory, or resources, or political power. They were not trying to build an empire. They were trying to destroy something else, something invisible, something every other nation had already begun to fear. Because, by this point, the world had seen something it could not explain. A river turned to blood, a sky filled with darkness, a nation broken by plagues, and a sea split in half. Every nation heard about it. Every king knew. Every army understood. Something had changed, and the stories did not sound human. No army splits a sea. No king controls the sky. This was something else, something the world could not categorize. And when people cannot explain something, they either fear it or deny it. Kings began to ask, what kind of God does this? Not a God of statues, not a God of rituals, but a God who intervenes, who breaks nature itself. There was a God moving with this people, and that God was not to be challenged. The Philistines feared him. Moab feared him. Canaan feared him. Fear spread across the world like fire. But Amalek did something no one else did. They looked at the same evidence, the same miracles, the same power, and they made a different decision. They refused to fear, and that is what made them different. But there is something even deeper, something hidden beneath the surface that most people never see, because Amalek did not appear randomly. They showed up at a very specific moment, not before, not later, exactly when something shifted, a moment when doubt entered the story, a moment when people began to ask, is God really with us or not? And right after that moment, Amalek appeared, not by accident, not by coincidence, but by design. And what they did next was so calculated, so precise, so disturbingly intentional, that it changed forever how God would deal with them. The sea had just closed. The impossible had just happened. An entire nation walked through water on dry ground. Walls of the sea rose on both sides, like a path carved through chaos. And behind them, an army screamed, then vanished beneath the waves. The most powerful empire on earth, destroyed in a single moment, not by weapons, not by strategy, but by God, and the world heard about it. Stories spread faster than armies, faster than kings could react. Caravans carried whispers. Traders repeated what they saw. Fear entered every kingdom. Even in quiet homes, far from battlefields, mothers whispered to their children, do not speak against this God. Do not challenge this people, because whatever protects them cannot be fought. Egypt had fallen, not weakened, not wounded, crushed, and the world understood something. There was a God who fights, not distant, not silent, but active, intervening, overriding nature itself. And fear spread like fire across dry land. Joshua chapter 2 says, the hearts of nations melted, not just afraid, undone. Their courage dissolved. Their resistance collapsed. Their confidence disappeared. No one wanted to face Israel. No one wanted to stand against a people protected by a God who could split the sea. Except one, Amalek. They saw the same miracles, heard the same stories, knew the same power, and they felt nothing, no fear, no hesitation, no respect. Deuteronomy says it clearly. They did not fear God. That is the difference. Every other nation feared. Amalek did not, and that changed everything. Exodus chapter 17. Israel is in the wilderness, tired, hungry, disorganized. No walls, no defenses, no formation. Families moving slowly. Children struggling to keep up. The elderly falling behind. Dust rising. Heat pressing down. This was not an army. This was a moving population. exposed, scattered, vulnerable. And then, without warning, screams from behind, from the shadows, from where no one was watching. Amalek attacks, not a battle line, not a warning, an ambush. They had been watching. They had been waiting. They chose the exact moment when no one was ready. This was not chaos. This was precision. Blades moving through the weak, bodies falling in the dust, children pulled away, the wounded finished without mercy. They did not attack the army. They attacked the vulnerable. Deuteronomy reveals it. They struck the rear, the weak, the exhausted, the ones who could not keep up. They hunted them, not randomly, intentionally. This was not war. This was calculated cruelty. No territory taken, no victory claimed, just destruction. Why? Because this was never about land. This was defiance, not against Israel, but against God. And in that moment, God responds. Moses turns to Joshua, a man under authority. Choose men. Go fight Amalek. This was not a human reaction. This was a divine response. For the first time, Israel fights back, but the battle does not unfold the way anyone expects. Moses climbs a hill with the staff of God in his hand, and something strange happens. When his hands are raised, Israel prevails. When his hands fall, Amalek advances. The battle in the valley is controlled by what happens on the hill. Not strength, not skill, but dependence, connection. Victory is not produced by effort, but by alignment. When Moses grows tired, his hands begin to fall, and immediately Israel starts losing. Pressure rise. Fear returns. The weak are exposed again. So Aaron and Hur step in. They lift his hands and hold them steady until sunset, and Israel wins. But this was never just a battle. This was a revelation. Because right before this attack, something critical happened. Exodus 17:7. The people asked, "Is the Lord among us or not?" That question opened the door, not for answers, but for doubt. Doubt entered, and the moment doubt appeared, Amalek followed, not randomly, not later, immediately. And doubt does something dangerous. It does not destroy faith immediately. It weakens it just enough for something else to enter. In Hebrew, there is a word for this, karcha, to happen as if everything is random, to cool, to drain passion, to defile, to corrupt what was once pure. This is how Amalek works. They attack when faith grows cold. They attack when belief becomes casual. They attack when people start thinking, maybe God is not really here. Doubt creates weakness. Weakness invites attack. And Amalek moves in every time. This is not just history. This is a pattern. And that pattern did not end in the wilderness. It continues through Saul, through Haman, and even today, because what Amalek represents never truly disappears. And what happens next will prove just how dangerous it is to leave it unfinished. Generations passed, but nothing was forgotten. What Saul left unfinished did not disappear. It waited, and in Persia, it returned. His name was Haman, an Agagite, a descendant of the line Saul failed to erase. And this time, the battlefield is gone. Now the war moves into a palace, into law, into power. Haman rees fast, trusted by the king, promoted above the princes, feared across the empire, and he loves it. He wants honor, recognition, public submission. That is why Mordecai matters. Because Mordecai will not bow, not once, not publicly, not for show. And that refusal cuts directly into Haman's pride. At first, it looks personal. One man offended, one ego wounded. But it becomes something far darker, because Haman does not settle for Mordecai's death. He wants the Jews destroyed, all of them, men, women, children, in one day. Why does the king listen so easily? Because Haman is strategic. He does not begin with hatred. He begins with politics. There is a certain people scattered throughout your empire. Their laws are different. They do not fully align with the king's interests. It is not profitable to tolerate them. That is how he frames it. Not as murder, as management. Not as genocide, as political necessity. And the king signs. A decree is sealed. Irreversible. The date is set, and fear spreads. Now, this is where Esther enters. Not suddenly, not randomly. Esther is a Jewish woman, an orphan raised by Mordecai. She is inside the palace because the king chose her as queen, but her identity is hidden. The king does not know. She belongs to the people, marked for death. That is what makes this moment so powerful. The answer was already in the palace. Before the decree was written, Mordecai mourns publicly. He tears his clothes. He cries out in the city, and Esther hears about it. But when Mordecai tells her to go before the king, she hesitates, because entering uninvited can mean death. No one walks into that throne room on courage alone. If the king does not extend the golden scepter, she dies. So she makes a choice. Fast for me. 3 days. No food, no water. If I perish, I perish. Then she goes in, and the king extends the scepter. Grace breaks open the moment, but the reversal does not happen all at once. It unfolds slowly. A banquet, then another. And while Esther prepares, something else begins moving. That night, the king cannot sleep. No reason, no explanation. So he orders the royal chronicles to be read. And there, one forgotten detail appears. Mordecai once saved the king's life, and he was never rewarded. At that exact moment, Haman enters. He has come to ask for Mordecai's death. But before he speaks, the king asks him, what should be done for the man? The king delights to honor, and Haman assumes it must be him. Of course, it must be him. So he describes the honor he has always wanted. Royal robes, the king's horse, a public parade, someone proclaiming, this is what is done for the man. The king delights to honor. Then the king says, do all of that for Mordecai, and Haman must lead the honor he wanted for himself. That is the first reversal, but not the last, because Haman has already prepared the gallows, high, public, final, built for Mordecai. At the second banquet, Esther finally speaks. If I have found favor, let my life be given to me and my people, for we have been sold to be destroyed. The king turns. Who would do this? And Esther says, the adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman. Everything stops. The king walks out in fury. Haman collapses in panic. He begs, he pleads, but it is too late. Because one of the servants says, "There is a gallows prepared for Mordecai," and the king answers, "Hang him on it." The instrument he built became the instrument of his own judgment. The decree still exists, but now the Jews are given the right to defend themselves, and the day meant for destruction becomes a day of survival. This is not coincidence. This is completion. What Saul left unfinished, God did not forget. Agag is brought forward, still alive, spared when he should have been destroyed. A king left breathing, a line left uncut. Samuel looks at him, not as a prisoner, but as unfinished judgment. As your sword made women childless, so your mother will be childless. And Samuel executes him before the Lord. The king is gone, but the command was already broken, because what was preserved was not just a life, it was continuity, a future, something that could return, and it does. Years later, Saul is dying on the battlefield, wounded, collapsing. A man comes to him and finishes what the battle began. He takes the crown from Saul's head, the bracelet from his arm, and walks away. Later, when he is asked, "Who are you?" he answers, "I am an Amalekite." That is not a detail. That is the outcome. Amalek was never erased. Still present, still close. Close enough to reach the king. Close enough to take his crown. And what survives does not remain the same. It moves through time, through generations, until it becomes something else. 500 years later, it returns. Not as raiders, not from the wilderness, not with swords. This time it is written. A decree, official, sealed, irreversible, sent across the empire. 127 provinces, from India to Ethiopia. Every region receives the same command. Destroy them all. Men, women, children. In one day. The 13th day of the month of Adar. Not random. Chosen. Lots were cast poor. Calculated. Fixed. And once it is sealed, it cannot be revoked. Not even by the king. That is the law of Persia, which means this is no longer a threat. It is scheduled destruction, and it does not depend on one man. It activates a system. Couriers deliver it, officials prepare it, governors enforce it, and people carry it out. Because the law allows it. And more than that, it rewards it. They are permitted to take the plunder, wealth, property, everything left behind. And that changes everything. Because now, destruction is not just legal, it is profitable. And when destruction becomes profitable, participation spreads fast, wide, unstoppable. This is no longer hatred. This is administration. This is infrastructure. A system designed to erase a people completely. This is where the story becomes bigger than Israel, because the real target was never just a people. It was the promise carried by that people. From the beginning, before there was a nation called Israel, there was already a word. In Genesis, after the fall, God spoke of a coming conflict. The seed of the woman and the serpent. One line would continue through history, and one day, someone would come to crush the serpent's head. That is where this war begins. Not in the wilderness, not with Saul, not with Haman. Much earlier, then the promise narrows from humanity to Abraham. Through your seed, all nations of the earth will be blessed. Then it narrows again. Not every nation, not every tribe, Israel. Then again, not every tribe in Israel, Judah. Then again, not every house in Judah, David. And by the time you reach the monarchy, the line is no longer vague. It is specific. The future king, the coming deliverer, the promised one, must come through this people, through this line, not just spiritually, but physically, a bloodline, a genealogy, a traceable path through history. That is why this threat matters so much. Because if Israel is erased, the line is erased. If the line is erased, the promise is erased. And if the promise is erased, the Messiah never arrives. That is the deeper logic behind these attacks. They are not random bursts of hatred. They are strikes against continuity, against covenant, against the future. That is why the pattern repeats. Pharaoh attacks Hebrew sons. Why? Because the line must be broken. Athaliah murders the royal seed. Why? Because the line must be broken. Haman seeks the destruction of the entire Jewish people. Why? Because the line must be broken. Different century, different empire, same objective. Stop what God promised before it can arrive. That is what makes Amalek different. Amalek is not just hostility. It is hostility aimed at destiny. It does not merely attack weakness. It attacks calling. It attacks inheritance. It attacks whatever carries the future of God's promise. And that is why its appearance is so consistent. Whenever the line is vulnerable, the pressure rises. Whenever the future looks fragile, the attack intensifies. Not just to wound Israel, to interrupt redemption itself. This is why partial obedience was so dangerous. Because leaving Amalek alive meant leaving alive a force that opposed the promised future. Not just a tribe, not just a memory, a war against a rival, a war against the one who was coming. And for a moment, it looked close, close enough to threaten the people, close enough to threaten the line, close enough to make the promise look fragile. But fragile is not defeated, because what God promises, hell can oppose, history can delay, empires can attack, but none of them can erase. And then it happens again, not in Egypt, not in Persia, now, inside Judea. A king rises, heroed, and like Pharaoh before him, he senses the threat. Not an army, not a rebellion, a child, born in Bethlehem, and that is enough. So, he gives the order, kill the children, every boy, 2 years old and under. A targeted strike, not against power, against the future. The same pattern, the same war. Destroy the seed before it grows. But this time, God intervenes. A warning in the night. A family moves to Egypt. Once again, the child escapes. The line survives. And this time, the promise is no longer distant. It has entered history. What Pharaoh tried to stop failed. What Amalek tried to interrupt failed. What Haman tried to erase failed. And now what Herod tries to destroy fails. Because the line is no longer fragile. The Messiah has arrived. The Lion of Judah is alive. And what every empire tried to prevent has already begun. The story did not end in Persia, and it did not end in ancient history, because the pattern did not disappear. It only changed form. Today, it no longer looks like armies. No swords, no desert raids, no official decrees written on scrolls. But the pressure is still there, subtle, constant, often invisible. Because now, the attack is not always physical. It is internal, psychological, spiritual. The same question repeats itself. Did God really say? That question is ancient, older than Amalek, older than empires, and it works because it does not attack strength. It targets certainty. It introduces doubt, and once doubt enters, alignment begins to shift. That is how the pattern continues, not always through destruction, sometimes through distortion, not always by force, sometimes by persuasion. Truth becomes negotiable, conviction becomes flexible, obedience becomes partial, and partial obedience still carries the same danger, because what is left alive still grows, still returns, still adapts. That is why the pattern feels familiar. Different language, different culture, same pressure to compromise, to delay, to redefine what God has already said. And it rarely looks dramatic. It looks reasonable, justified, even wise. That is what makes it dangerous, because it feels right while moving you away from what is true. And over time, small compromises become large consequences. Just like before, what is not removed does not stay small. It grows, it matures, and eventually it demands more. That is the pattern, not ancient, not outdated, still active, still present, and still aiming at the same thing: to interrupt what God is doing before it is complete.